And today is Saturday. It is at the end of December 2023. I think it's the 30th. So I am going to review the year in books and records. I've done this before, and I should be upfront. These are not newly released books and records. These are books and records that were new to me this year, or that I read or listened to, that kind of shaped the year. I'll start with books, and then I'll go to records. So for books, about halfway through the year in June, I did a big book review because I'd been off work for a couple of months recovering from some surgery, and I'd read a ton of books. So I'm not going to go through the rest of my list. I'm just going to pick a couple of important books. If you want to get a sense of what the rest of the year really looked like, go back and check out that video. So for books, well, to start off, I'm in the final pages of what will be my 70th book of the year, which in terms of like number of books is a real jump over the previous year, which was around 50 something. And that's entirely because I had 2 months, 10 weeks where I did nothing but read, lay on the couch and recover. So I expect that next year I'll return to the mean of about one a week. But some of those books were big books. Like I started the year reading James Joyce Ulysses. And in fact, I'm ending the year, the book I'm not the middle of, approaching the end of, is Richard Ellmann's James Joyce biography, which I picked up at the start of the year thinking I would read Ulysses and then this. But for whatever reason, I just didn't feel like it until a few weeks ago. And like I say, this is a really engaging biography. I like a literary biography where the work of the biographer really focuses on the writing of the music or the books that are front and center for the writer. Where I get a little tired with biography is where the first third is like elementary school report cards and what the grocery store was that they went to. I'm not interested in the sort of unencumbered narrative of the childhood of the artists. I don't think that it gives an insight into the work. What Ellmann does is, right from the onset, he's talking about Dubliners and Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man as he's narrating young James's life. It's a really great, just works really effectively. And so while I'm learning about Joyce's childhood, it's also immediately referencing the characters and content that formed the short stories for Dubliners and Portrait. And then the same as he's writing Ulysses. One of the books I read earlier in the year was all about the process to publish Ulysses, which was a really interesting book. And there's a fair bit of that in here, but not too much. So I think this book was first written in 1959. And I think that's a republish, the first revision of the 1959 classic. So I'm sure there's a lot of Joyce scholarship that's not included, even in the rewrite of this book. I did subscribe to the Joyce Quarterly this year, and probably enjoyed, more than half of those articles, and didn't like about half of them, which seems about right for an academic quarterly. So this and Ulysses. Right? Here's my copy of Ulysses, which I have had since college, so it's gotten a little bit beaten up. I did buy is it Centenary? Yes, right, because Ulysses was published in 1922. So there's a large, it's like a coffee table sized book that's the manuscript of Ulysses with many essays, and then each page has tons of reference points and footnotes, which I started when I was reading Ulysses at the start of the year. I started with that book, but pretty soon I realized I just wanted to read this. I did read the essays, and I would refer back to the footnotes. I'm not super keen on I don't require myself to understand all of Joyce's references. I pick up more every time I read it. And I do like understanding the structure and the references. I do like it, but it's secondary to the pleasure of reading this book. And Ulysses is more than a book. Joyce thought that, and I agree with him. It is more than an experiment in literary style. It's easy to talk about Ulysses as an experiment in style, as a modernist stylistic masterpiece, which it is. But what it is first is a teaching on what it is to be human. And I think that that's the way to approach this book, is to read it as an experience and allow for the gaps in details to I just let them wash over me. Bloom, Stephen, Molly. They're not just depicted as characters in the book. It really is an experience of the nature of being a human, with all of those different characters reflecting different aspects of it. So Ulysses and the Richard Ellmann biography kind of began and ended my year. I think when I'm done with the biography, I'm going to reread Dubliners and Portrait. I haven't read those. I haven't read Dubliners since I was a freshman at college. I've read Portrait a few times since college. This is my fourth time through Ulysses. This was my fourth time through Ulysses. And the first time I read it all the way through, we read sections in college. The first time I read it all the way through, I also had an audio recording, a fantastic recording. I'll dig it up and put that in the video description, because it was a wonderful audio. There were a couple. There's one I think that even has a cast of characters. I don't care for that. This one, I'll dig it out and link it. But I found that very helpful for a pass through. Was I would walk and listen, and then I would read what I had listened to. And I think a case can be made either way for Ulysses as being primarily a read experience. I mean, I think Joyce was totally in the primacy of the written word. This isn't it's not a, but it is such a sonorous reading, and I think Joyce thought of himself as a dramatist, as a playwright, even though he only wrote, as far as I know, only the one play. So, Ulysses and Richard Ellmann, James Joyce, with a follow-up of Dubliners and Portrait, which will be the first couple of books for 2024. Then in the middle of the year, I got into Nabokov. And that was primarily Ada, which was my first Nabokov. I read that in, it must have been 87, 88, which when I look back was only 15 years or so after it had been published, right? It was published in the late 60s. And, at that time, I didn't know even about Lolita. It wasn't like I was culturally aware of Nabokov as Lolita and picked up Ada. I don't know what made me pick up Ada. I picked up this volume, this edition. The problem with this edition is that the first 30 or so pages are missing, which makes me very sad. But I bought another copy to read. I love Ada. I think I read a lot of Martin Amis over the summer. I talked about that in that other video, and he also loved Nabokov, but he didn't like Ada. He thought it was sterile. I like it in the same way I like Ulysses. I think that Ada, the novel, is is an experience. Nabokov is telling a story. He's explaining some ideas about time. But by reading the book, I think I become immersed in that experience of time, in that particular type of experience of time. If you haven't read Ada, read it. One of the technical attributes of the book is that there's multiple series of editorial voices. At the end of it, there's a voice of Van and Ada in their 90s. Then there are earlier texts and earlier comments, and they all intertwine so that then when the end comes, there actually is an experience of like the dissipation of time. It's not a description. It's an experience. So I also read Lolita a couple times. I have a hard time getting through Charlotte Hayes when she dies. That's a moment that I have to gird myself for. I find it immensely tragic, and I listened to the Lolita podcast. That's what it's called, and it's a great survey of how to read Lolita, and I really got a better understanding of how to interpret or how to narrate or how to experience the narrator, Humbert Humbert's narrative voice without becoming complicit in it. That's part of the book, is the struggle to not be complicit with Humbert and his immensely seductive style. And then at the end of it, the absence of Dolores. It's quite a remarkable book, right? So that's my hot take. Lolita, quite a remarkable book. What's very what's very present is the absence of the girl Dolores. Again, entirely Nabokov's intent, but I needed a bit of help to pull that apart. He spoke. There's some interviews, but he was very clear that was his intent. Both of those, the seduction of Humbert, or the seductive quality of Humbert, to be resisted and read through, to see Dolores as she is never represented in the book. She's only represented through Humbert's view. I think that's what is meant when people say, when I say that Lolita's a beautiful book, that's where the beauty comes from. It's a terrifying book. So then, along with Ada and Lolita, I read Brian Boyd's 2-volume biography. Also fantastic. And fantastic because he has at his grasp such enormous volumes of information about Nabokov's life, about the texts, the process of writing. Wonderful. I don't have a whole lot more to say about it, except that these two books were kind of the pillar of my summer. All right, so those were the books that I would summarize, that I would say were the bulk of my reading. I read a lot of other stuff. I read all of the Flashman series, which is kind of a guilty pleasure. Like I said, for 2024, I've had on my bookshelf all of Proust. And I thought that what I would do is sort of get in the mood of things with Ulysses and Ada and then pick up Proust. But that hasn't happened. But it will in 2024. I may alternate a volume of Proust. On my shelf, I have every one of Vonnegut's novels and Proust. Now, I've read Vonnegut before, but I've never read it in sequence, just sat down and read them. So what I may do is 8 volumes of the Proust. I may read Proust and then 1 or 2 of Vonnegut and then go back to Proust. It'll be a very human experience. All right, now records. Well, before I do records, let me just throw in a film. I don't watch a lot of films, but I saw the Wham documentary, the Netflix Wham documentary. Fantastic. So much primary footage. Wonderful. Wham, the documentary. Okay, so here are my favorite records of the year. I didn't buy as many records this year as I did last year. 2022, I kind of bought some big sets. I bought the complete ABBA. This came early in the year, and I just love it. Bing and Ruth, an album called Species. I think each of the tracks were recorded live one take. I don't know if that's true, but they're all recorded on the Farfisa organ, or at least they feature the Farfisa, which is the same instrument that Philip Glass used in his ensemble, or uses. And it's great. I love it. It's 2 albums. Bing and Ruth, Species. It's not very compelling, is it, when I just take it out like that? So I won't do that anymore. Heinbach. I have a couple of things from Heinbach. Heinbach, I was introduced to his music through his YouTube channel, Probably most of you who know Heinbach also were introduced through his YouTube channel, although he's a very active composer in Germany and I think does a lot of theater work. But he's wonderfully articulate about the history of synthesizers. He's done a lot of work just using sort of lab test equipment, so not musical instruments, but telecommunications devices, old laboratory information that create sound, buzzes and hums, and uses those. But I think that gives him a real tactile familiarity with the core of synthesis, and particularly these earlier synthesizers. So he went, I think this was in Italy, where there's a Syncat. It's a monophonic synth, monophonic, just one note at a time. And I think he just sat and recorded some sessions. The cover here, there's his Zoom, and it looks like a bottle of beer, and the synthesizers. And he put it out, and it's an absolutely pure instrument, pure sound. Not pure like sine wave, just pure, unadulterated. I love the idea of the album and the instrument, like inventions for an instrument. It's fantastic. So those two, I think, were, well, I don't know about the Bing and Ruth one. I think the Heinbach was new this year. This, of course, Heifetz playing Bach was not Bach. Heinbach, Bach. Heifetz playing Bach, not new this year. I had the CDs of this recording in college and listened to it endlessly. And a friend of mine, my friend Bruce, picked up a copy of this earlier in the year. And when I saw that, I thought, wait, I don't have that on vinyl. So I found a copy at Mono. So part of why I love this recording, because Heifetz playing is how I grew up listening to Bach, that style. It's very different from the sort of early music style, but it's a wonderful style. But I also love the sound of an old mono recording. The two are inseparable in my experience of the music. I also have Hilary Hahn playing the same pieces in of course, a recent recording, and I love that too. But there's a similarity with Hilary Hahn and Heifetz in their style. They're so centered in their presence. Those are all going to fall. Billy Bragg, The Roaring 40. This is new this year. This is fantastic. Reissue in a collection of stuff from the beginning. The Milkman of Human Kindness. It's the first Billy Bragg song I ever heard. I am the milkman of human kindness. I'll leave an extra pint. I don't think you get better lyrics than that. This included some of the Wilco tracks, which I'll be honest, I've never really paid any attention to. But these are awesome. Walt Whitman's Niece with Wilco. It's a Seeger track that they did. Fantastic. It's really awesome. This, I will show you this because they're all different shades of green. There's one. And here is another. It's great. I think there's a version in orange as well. And there's a third green. So, that was good. I also have the Billy Bragg BBC, the Peel Sessions. Plus a bunch of other things. All right. Hanaya Rani. Okay, she was a find this year. Find for me. I know she's been around for a while, but this isn't a release from this year. I think it's yellow vinyl. I like colored vinyl. she's a fantastic synthesist. In my mind, she's in the tradition of Jean-Michel Jarre in the sense that she's just such an accomplished instrumentalist, performer, and combining her ability to actually play keyboards with her ability to utilize the programmed capacity of her synthesizers. It's just wonderful music. This, I think, was also a live session recorded in a studio. Yep, live from Studio S2 in Warsaw. Oops, sorry. So this is great. And she's all over YouTube. I have a couple of her albums from this year. This was my favorite. And the last one for the year, this is kind of an honorable mention. I don't love it as much as I hoped I would. Vince Clarke's solo. Vince Clarke, of course, from Erasure. I like it. I like this. I mean, and I like the fact that Vince Clarke is doing music like this now. It's sort of dark, droney stuff, which I like. This didn't quite rock my world. But maybe I need to give it a second listen. It's totally worth mentioning in this list, but it is it's here out of respect. I'll give it another listen, and you should get it. You should listen to it. All right, listening goals for 2024. I'm starting the year with kind of a Russian focus. I've hang on. I came across this piece by Shostakovich, which is a set of songs for soprano and piano trio, piano, violin, cello, and they knocked me off my feet. Opus 127, so I think quite late. So I'm going to do a study of these. They're not difficult to play. But I want to take a look at that. And then I've had on my docket an analysis of Ostvolskaya, Galina Ostvolskaya, her third piano sonata, which I played. I studied that with my teacher a couple of years ago. I really got into it and started to do a big quasi-Schenkerian analysis of the piece. There's a lot there, and not a whole lot published like that. So I think there's a real space here to do something interesting, and then record it as well. So I want to do that over the spring. I expect my new piano to arrive in January. New meaning new to me. It's a refurbished Steinway from 1924, I think, or 27. If it's 24, next year, of course, is the centenary of the. So I'm going to re-engage or restart my house concert series. But I just want to spend some time doing just straight recordings with this beautiful piano and my Zoom setup. I could do perfectly good tracks. So that's the start of the year in terms of listening. Messiaen, I think before I return to serious Messiaen study, I need to get a bit more familiar with Pelléas and Melisande. So I have the score for that. So I may be looking for a good reference recording of that. That's probably my spring in terms of listening. For playing, I'm recovering from some surgery on my hands and arms, so I'm going to be spending the next month or two working through the Courtauld exercises, which I kind of audaciously consider myself in the lineage of Alfred Courtauld because my teacher at Bates was a student of his. Anyway, I've always referred. Some of those technical exercises have been consistent with me throughout my life. Others have come and gone. What I'm trying to do is put together a set that can be done every day that hits each of the chapters and each of the different techniques. And that will help recuperate from the surgery. I had some stiffness in my thumb as a result. My forearm is a bit sore. So that's part of the plan. And then just to wrap up, I think in 2024, I spent most of the year with some Schumann. I really want to play Kreisleriana, so I'm just going to take my time and work through it, and piece it out section by section, along with the other music I'm working on. But this time next year, again, a bit audacious, but I have a piano piece that I've been working on that I think is a nice partner piece for Kreisleriana. It would be a great house concert to do the two. So that's a goal. I'm going to do another video entirely on 2024 goals and what I think a good resolution is. So I should wrap this up now. Sort of, yeah. I'm going to wrap it up. And let me know in the comments what your top 3 books, records were for the year. I'm not talking about, I got into a ton of music streaming, but I thought here I would focus just on the physical vinyl that I purchased. So, cheers.